I never thought I would become the kind of person who sets up security cameras around my property. But living in Pine Ridge Estates taught me that sometimes you need evidence to prove you are not losing your mind. My name is Trevor Ingram, and I've been living in this planned community outside Boise, Idaho for 3 years. I bought my house specifically because it sat on a 2-acre lot backing up to national forest land, which meant I had plenty of privacy and access to dead-standing timber for firewood. Being a contractor who works mostly from home, I've always enjoyed the physical labor of processing my own wood for my fireplace and the outdoor fire pit I built myself. There is something satisfying about cutting, splitting, and stacking cord after cord, knowing that come winter I would be warm without spending a fortune on heating bills. The HOA in Pine Ridge Estates had always been manageable until last spring when Patricia Manning took over as president. Patricia was exactly what you would picture when someone says the word Karen. She was 52 years old with that distinctive asymmetrical haircut that somehow defied the laws of physics, always wore rhinestone-studded reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and drove a white Lexus SUV with a bumper sticker that said, "I speak to managers." Her husband, Richard, was a dentist who seemed to spend most of his time avoiding her by taking golf trips. Patricia lived 4 houses down from me in a pristine colonial-style home with a lawn that looked like it belonged on a golf course. From the moment she took over the HOA, she made it her personal mission to enforce every single rule in our covenant with religious fervor, and when the existing rules did not suit her purposes, she simply invented new interpretations. The trouble started in early October 2025. I had spent the better part of September cutting dead lodgepole pine on the Forest Service land behind my property. I had all the proper permits, followed all the regulations, and hauled out about 6 cords of wood that I split and stacked in neat rows along the side of my garage. The wood was stacked on pallets to keep it off the ground, covered with tarps to shed rain, and positioned exactly 15 feet from my property line, which was well within the HOA guidelines that allowed for firewood storage as long as it was neatly stacked and maintained. I was proud of that wood pile. Each piece was split to roughly the same size, the rows were perfectly straight, and the whole setup looked like something out of a homesteading magazine. Several neighbors even complimented me on it, saying they wished they had the energy to process their own firewood. Then, Patricia decided it was an eyesore. The first notice came on October 8th. I found it tucked into my front door, a formal letter on HOA letterhead that stated my firewood storage was in violation of the community aesthetic standards. According to Patricia's interpretation, the phrase neatly stacked and maintained actually meant the wood needed to be stored out of sight from the street, despite the fact that my woodpile was not visible from the street at all unless you deliberately walked up my driveway. I attended the next HOA meeting on October 15th to address this. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a bland room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable folding chairs. About 20 homeowners showed up, which was actually a good turnout for our neighborhood. Patricia sat at the head table with the other board members, Greg Morrison, the vice president who always looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, and Susan Chen, the treasurer who spent most meetings playing games on her phone. "Mr. Ingram, you are listed under new business," Patricia said when my turn came, not bothering to look up from her papers. I stood up, keeping my voice calm and professional. "I received a notice about my firewood being in violation of HOA rules. I have reviewed the covenant, and my wood storage meets all the requirements. It is neatly stacked, maintained, and not visible from the street. I am not sure what the violation is supposed to be." Patricia finally looked at me, her expression suggesting I had just tracked mud across her white carpet. "The covenant states that all outdoor storage must be aesthetically pleasing and not detract from the community's property values. Your pile of wood is neither aesthetically pleasing nor appropriate for a neighborhood of this caliber." "It is firewood," I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. "Multiple other homeowners have firewood stored on their properties. The Hendersons have a rack by their back fence. The Kowalskis have a cord stacked behind their shed." "Their storage is out of sight," Patricia countered. "So is mine. You cannot see it from the street at all." "I can see it from my evening walks." "That is because you walk up people's driveways," I said, and I heard a few chuckles from other homeowners. Patricia's face flushed. "I have the right to inspect properties for covenant compliance. The wood needs to be moved to your backyard or removed from the property entirely. You have 2 weeks to comply." I wanted to argue further, but Greg Morrison caught my eye and gave me a subtle shake of his head. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. "Listen, Trevor, just move the wood," he said quietly. "Patricia is on a power trip, and fighting her just makes everything worse. Put it behind your house where she cannot see it, and this goes away." He was probably right, but the principle of the thing bothered me. Still, I did not want to rack up fines or become Patricia's personal target, so over the next weekend, I moved all 6 cords of wood to my backyard, restacking it along the back fence line. It took me 2 full days of hard work, and I was sore for a week afterward, but at least the problem was solved, or so I thought. On November the 3rd, I came home from a job site around 4 in the afternoon to find my backyard looking oddly empty. At first, I thought maybe it was just the angle or the light playing tricks on me. Then, I walked around the side of my house and stopped dead. My firewood was gone. All of it. 6 cords of wood that had taken me weeks to cut, haul, split, and stack had vanished. The pallets were still there, and the tarps were folded neatly on the ground, but every single piece of wood had disappeared. My first thought was that someone had stolen it, which seemed insane given the sheer amount of wood and the effort it would take to move it. I immediately checked my back gate, which was still locked from the inside. I checked for tire tracks in the grass, but the ground was hard and did not show much. I walked the fence line looking for any sign of how someone could have accessed my yard, but everything seemed secure. I called the Otta County Sheriff's Office and filed a report. Deputy Martinez came out, took photos, and wrote everything down, but he was honest about the chances of recovery. "Firewood theft is more common than you would think," he said, "but it is almost impossible to prove ownership. Even if we found a pile of wood that looked like yours, how do we prove it is actually yours? Unless you marked every piece, and even then, it is tough." "Who steals 6 cords of firewood?" I asked. He shrugged. "People who heat with wood and do not want to pay for it. Could be someone saw the pile and came back with a truck at night. Your neighbors see or hear anything?" I had not asked yet, but I promised I would. After Deputy Martinez left, I went door to door on my street. Most people had not noticed anything, but Mrs. Alvarez, who lived directly behind me on the next street over, had something interesting to say. "I did see a truck in your backyard yesterday," she said. She was an elderly woman, probably in her 70s, who spent most of her day watching the neighborhood from her kitchen window. "It was morning time, maybe 10 or 11, white pickup truck. I thought you were having the wood delivered or something." "Did you see who was driving?" She shook her head. "Too far away and I did not have my glasses on, but it was there for a while, maybe an hour or so. They loaded it up and left through your back gate." That answered how but not who. My back gate was visible from Mrs. Alvarez's house, but not from my own because of the way my garage blocked the view. Someone had deliberately chosen a time when I was not home and had the audacity to spend an hour loading up my wood in broad daylight. Over the next few days, I asked around the neighborhood and checked local online marketplaces to see if anyone was selling firewood. Nothing turned up. I was frustrated and angry, and I had already started pricing out replacement wood when my friend Derek suggested I set up trail cameras. "Dude, if they stole it once, they might come back for something else," he said. We were having beers at his place, and I was venting about the whole situation. "I use trail cameras for hunting. They are motion activated, take photos and video, and some of them send alerts to your phone. Put a few around your property, and at least you will know if anyone is creeping around." It seemed like overkill for a suburban neighborhood, but I was tired of feeling violated. I ordered 3 trail cameras online, good ones that shot in high definition and had night vision. When they arrived, I mounted one covering my back gate, one pointed at my driveway, and one covering the side yard where my firewood had originally been stacked. For a couple of weeks, nothing interesting happened. The cameras caught the usual stuff: raccoons, neighborhood cats, the occasional deer wandering through from the forest. I started to feel a little silly about the whole setup. Then, on November 20th, I got an alert on my phone while I was at a job site in Meridian. The camera covering my side yard had detected motion. I pulled up the app and watched the live feed. Patricia Manning was standing in my side yard, hands on her hips, looking at the empty space where my firewood used to be. I watched for a few minutes as she walked around, occasionally bending down to examine the ground, She took out her phone and made a call, talking animatedly to someone, though I could not hear what she was saying. After about 5 minutes, she left through my side gate. I sat in my truck staring at my phone, trying to figure out what the hell she was doing on my property. We had security on the cameras, so I downloaded the clip and saved it, then went back to work. But my mind was not on the job. Why would Patricia be inspecting my side yard? That evening, I went through the camera footage from the previous weeks, really scrutinizing it for the first time. Most of it was uneventful, but when I got to November 2nd, the day before I discovered my wood missing, I found something that made my blood run cold. At 9:30 in the morning on November 2nd, Patricia's white Lexus pulled into my driveway. She got out, walked around to my back gate, and opened it with a key. My back gate had a standard lock, nothing fancy, and apparently she had a key that fit it. She propped the gate open, then got back in her car and left. 20 minutes later, a white pickup truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men got out, both wearing jeans and work shirts. They opened my back gate and backed the truck in. Then, for the next hour and a half, they loaded my firewood into the truck. The camera angle was not perfect, but it captured enough. I could see them carrying armloads of wood, tossing it into the truck bed, making trip after trip. When the truck was loaded, they pulled out, and 10 minutes later, Patricia's Lexus returned. She went to the back gate, closed it, locked it, and left. She had stolen my firewood. The HOA president had orchestrated the theft of my property. I sat there in shock, watching the footage over and over. Part of me could not believe it. What possible reason would she have to steal my firewood? It made no sense. Unless this was some twisted punishment for not complying quickly enough with her initial complaint, or unless she was just that vindictive. I called Deputy Martinez the next morning and told him I had the theft on camera. He came by that afternoon, and I showed him the footage. "Well, that is pretty clear," he said, watching Patricia let herself into my backyard. "That is trespassing and theft at minimum. Do you know who the guys with the truck are?" "No, but I am going to find out." "Let me take a copy of this footage," Martinez said. "I will need to write this up and probably get a warrant to question her. This is not going to be fun for anyone." "She stole 6 cords of wood," I said. "I do not care if it is fun. I want my wood back, and I want her charged." Martinez nodded. "Understandable. But just so you know, this is going to get messy. HOA politics combined with criminal charges tends to blow up neighborhoods. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" She should have thought about that before she stole from me. Over the next few days, I did my own investigating. I took screenshots of the truck from the video and posted them in a local Facebook group asking if anyone recognized it. I also started watching for firewood being sold locally, checking Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and even driving around looking for roadside stands. On November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving, I found it. I was driving back from picking up some lumber in Eagle when I saw a hand-painted sign on Highway 20 that said, "Firewood for sale," with an arrow pointing down a side road. Something made me turn down that road, maybe just curiosity or the hope that I would find whoever had been selling cheap wood in the area. Half a mile down the rural road, I found a makeshift stand set up in a gravel pullout. There were 3 pickup trucks loaded with firewood, tarps over the top, and another hand-painted sign that said, "Seasoned firewood, $60 a cord, split and ready." And standing there, talking to a customer, was Patricia Manning. I pulled over on the opposite side of the road and just watched for a minute. Patricia was making a sale, helping a middle-aged man load wood into the back of his sedan. When he left, she sat down in a folding chair next to the trucks and pulled out her phone. I grabbed my phone and started recording video as I walked across the road. Patricia looked up when she heard my footsteps on the gravel. "Trevor," she said, her tone immediately defensive. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, keeping my phone pointed at the trucks. "Nice firewood stand you have got here. Where did you get all this wood? That is none of your business." "See, I think it is my business because I am pretty sure some of this wood is mine, the wood that was stolen from my backyard 3 weeks ago." Her face went pale, then immediately flushed red. "I do not know what you are talking about. This wood was sourced legally." "Really? Because I have video of you letting 2 guys into my backyard to load up my firewood." I stepped closer to one of the trucks and pulled back the tarp. The wood underneath looked exactly like mine. Split lodgepole pine, same size pieces, same characteristics. In fact, I am pretty sure this is my wood right here. Patricia stood up, her hands shaking. You are harassing me. I'm going to call the police. Please do, I said, because I already filed a police report and they are very interested in talking to you. Get off this property, she said, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. This is not your property. This is county right-of-way, and you are selling stolen goods. A car slowed down, the driver apparently interested in buying firewood, but when they saw us arguing, they sped up and kept going. You are costing me sales, Patricia said. Leave now, or I will have you arrested. For what? Standing on public property? She grabbed her phone and actually did call the police. I stepped back and waited, keeping my phone recording. Within 15 minutes, a Ada County Sheriff's deputy arrived. It was not Martinez this time, but a younger deputy named Collins. What's going on here? Collins asked, looking between us. Patricia immediately launched into a tirade. This man is harassing me and interfering with my business. He's making false accusations and threatening me. That is interesting, I said calmly, because I am the victim of a theft, and I believe she is selling my stolen property. I explained the situation to Collins, telling him about the missing firewood and the video evidence. Do you have that video with you? Collins asked. I pulled it up on my phone and showed him. He watched it carefully, then looked at Patricia. Madam, is that you in the video? I do not have to answer that, Patricia said. You have got the right to remain silent, Collins said. But there is an open investigation into this theft, and I'm going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. This is ridiculous, Patricia sputtered. I am the HOA president. I am a respected member of this community. That is great, Collins said, his tone making it clear he did not care. But right now, you need to come with me. I stayed at the scene while Collins took Patricia's information and called for another unit to come secure the location. More deputies arrived, including Martinez, who gave me a nod when he saw me. Told you this would get messy, he said. Yeah, but I found my wood. Maybe. We will have to verify that, which is going to be tricky. But the video of her entering your property is solid. That is trespassing at minimum, and if we can prove she orchestrated the theft, that is a felony. They impounded the trucks and the firewood as evidence. Patricia was taken down to the sheriff's office for questioning. I gave my statement again, provided all my video evidence, and then went home. Over the next few days, the story exploded through Pine Ridge Estates. Someone leaked what happened, probably someone who heard it on their police scanner, and suddenly everyone in the neighborhood was talking about it. Some people supported me, saying Patricia had been abusing her power for too long. Others thought I was making a big deal out of nothing and should have just let it go. The HOA held an emergency meeting on December 1st to address the situation. I attended, and so did almost every homeowner in the development. The community clubhouse was packed, standing room only. Greg Morrison, as vice president, ran the meeting since Patricia was currently suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. He looked exhausted. I am sure everyone has heard what happened, Greg began. Patricia Manning has been accused of theft and trespassing. The board has voted to suspend her from her duties as president until this matter is resolved. In the meantime, I will be acting as interim president. The meeting devolved into chaos. People were yelling questions, making accusations, demanding answers. Some people wanted Patricia immediately removed from the board. Others insisted we wait for the legal process to play out. A few people even suggested I had somehow set Patricia up, which was insane. How do we know the video is real? Someone shouted. Deepfakes are a thing now. The police verified the video, I said, standing up. They have the original files, the metadata, everything. It is real. But why would Patricia steal your firewood? Asked one of Patricia's friends, a woman named Deborah who lived on the next street. She does not need firewood. She has gas heat. That is a question you will have to ask her, I said. All I know is she took it and was selling it. Maybe she thought it was abandoned, Deborah said weakly. From my locked backyard? The meeting went on for 2 hours. Eventually, the board voted to remove Patricia from her position as president and suspend her membership in the HOA, pending the outcome of the criminal case. It was not a unanimous decision, but it passed. I left that meeting feeling vindicated, but also exhausted. This whole situation had taken over my life for the past month, and it was not even resolved yet. The investigation continued through December. The deputies identified the two men who had loaded the wood. They turned out to be day laborers Patricia had hired off a local app. When questioned, they said Patricia had told them she was helping a neighbor get rid of unwanted firewood and paid them $100 each to load it up. They had no idea it was stolen. The prosecutors charged Patricia with grand theft, trespassing, and criminal mischief. Because the value of the firewood was estimated at around $1,800, the theft charge was a felony. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but I refused to drop the charges. She could have apologized, I told the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh. She could have admitted what she did and offered to make it right. Instead, she lied, she denied everything, and she tried to make me look like the bad guy. I'm not dropping anything. I understand, Walsh said, and honestly, the evidence is strong enough that we do not need your cooperation to proceed, though it helps that you are willing to testify. Her lawyer is claiming she had permission to enter your property because of HOA rules. That's absurd. The HOA has no right to enter locked backyards without permission, and even if they did, they definitely cannot take property. I agree. We will see what the judge says. The preliminary hearing was held in early January 2026 at the Ada County Courthouse in Boise. I took the day off work and sat in the courtroom, watching as Patricia's lawyer argued that the whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. My client believed she was acting within her authority as HOA president to address a covenant violation, the lawyer said. He was an older man with a practiced expression of concern. When Mr. Ingram refused to comply with the board's directive to remove the firewood, Mrs. Manning made arrangements to have it removed and stored. She was selling it to recoup the costs of removal and storage. Where was it being stored? Judge Hernandez asked, sounding skeptical. In the trucks, Your Honor. For 3 weeks? Mrs. Manning was attempting to contact Mr. Ingram to work out an arrangement. By selling his property on the side of the highway? The lawyer did not have a good answer for that. The judge reviewed the video evidence, listened to both sides, and ruled that there was sufficient probable cause to proceed to trial. Patricia's lawyer then tried a different approach. He filed a motion claiming that I had violated Patricia's privacy by recording her without consent and that the video evidence should be suppressed. That motion was heard 2 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom while the lawyers argued about Idaho's recording consent laws. Idaho is a one-party consent state, Jennifer Walsh argued. Mr. Ingram was recording activity on his own property using legally installed security cameras. He had every right to do so, and there is no expectation of privacy in someone else's backyard where you are trespassing. The judge agreed, and the motion was denied. As winter progressed, my life slowly returned to normal, though the neighborhood remained tense. People took sides. Some treated me like a hero. Others avoided me like I was the problem. The HOA board, under Greg's leadership, actually started functioning better than it had in years. Greg eliminated most of Patricia's ridiculous rules and interpretations, and people were generally happier. I never got my original firewood back. The impounded wood was eventually released, but by that point, it had been sitting in a county storage yard for months and was no longer in good condition. I sold it cheap to someone who wanted to use it for landscaping borders and used the money to buy new wood. The trial was set for March 2026. Patricia's lawyer tried every delay tactic in the book, but eventually we ended up in court. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified on the first day, walking through the timeline of events and explaining the video evidence. Patricia's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive and petty, someone who had escalated a minor neighborhood dispute into a criminal matter. Is it not true, Mr. Ingram, that you could have simply moved the wood when first asked? He said during cross-examination. I did move it, I said. I moved it to my backyard, exactly as instructed. And yet you were still angry about having to do so. I was frustrated that I was being singled out for something that was not actually a violation, yes, but I complied. And when the wood was removed, you immediately assumed Mrs. Manning was responsible, did you not? No, actually. I had no idea who took it until I reviewed my security footage. The jury watched the videos. There was no way to spin what they showed. Patricia entering my property, the men loading up the wood, Patricia selling the wood by the highway. It was all there in high definition. Patricia testified on the second day. She was composed, but clearly nervous. Her story was that she had acted in what she believed was the HOA's best interest. The firewood was an eyesore and a violation, she said. Mr. Ingram had been uncooperative and hostile. I made the decision to have it removed as the HOA president, which I believed was within my authority. Did you tell Mr. Ingram you were going to remove his firewood? Walsh asked during cross-examination. No. Did you leave him a note or send him a letter? No. Did you contact him in any way before entering his property and taking his possessions? No, but I did not think I needed to. Why not? Patricia hesitated. Because he had already shown he was not going to comply. He had moved the wood to his backyard as instructed, had he not? Yes, but it was still visible from certain angles. From your evening walks up his driveway? Several jurors looked at each other at that. Walsh pressed on. Why were you selling the firewood, Mrs. Manning? To recoup costs. What costs? You hired 2-day laborers for a few hours. That cost you $200. You sold firewood worth $1,800. Where did that extra $1,600 go? Patricia did not have a good answer. The truth, which came out through bank records the prosecution subpoenaed, was that Patricia had been pocketing the money. She had been running this little firewood scheme for a couple of months. Selling wood, she claimed, was from her own property, but the quantity she had sold far exceeded what could have come from her lot. The investigation had expanded, and they found she had taken wood from at least 3 other properties in the neighborhood, always claiming HOA authority or simply taking it when people were not home. This revelation changed everything. What had started as a case about my stolen firewood became a much larger case about abuse of power and ongoing theft. The charges were amended to include multiple counts. On the 3rd day, closing arguments were presented. Patricia's lawyer made an emotional plea about how a respected community member had made a mistake in judgment and did not deserve to have her life ruined over firewood. Walsh's closing argument was more straightforward. This is not about firewood, she said. This is about someone who thought her position gave her the right to take other people's property. Mrs. Manning did not make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to trespass, to steal, and to profit from her theft. The evidence is clear, and the defendant's own testimony confirms what she did. We are asking you to hold her accountable. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, they found Patricia guilty on all counts: grand theft, multiple counts of petty theft, trespassing, and criminal mischief. Sentencing was set for April. In the meantime, Patricia was released on bail, but she was ordered to stay away from Pine Ridge Estates. She and Richard put their house up for sale almost immediately. The sentencing hearing was brief. Judge Hernandez was not sympathetic. Mrs. Manning, you held a position of trust in your community, and you abused that trust repeatedly for personal gain, he said. This was not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern of behavior. You targeted multiple homeowners, you lied to cover your actions, and you showed no remorse until you were caught. He sentenced her to 2 years in prison with 18 months suspended, meaning she would serve 6 months in county jail, followed by probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to all the victims, which totaled over $4,000, plus court costs and fees. Patricia's lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but it was denied. She began serving her sentence in May 2026. The neighborhood slowly healed after that. The HOA board, now led by Greg with new members who actually cared about the community rather than power, made significant changes. They clarified the rules, eliminated ambiguous language that could be weaponized, and established clear procedures for addressing violations that included actual communication with homeowners. I got a formal apology from the board and a small settlement from the HOA's insurance company to cover my legal expenses and the cost of replacing my firewood. It was not about the money, though. It was about the principle. Richard Manning moved out of state shortly after Patricia started her sentence. Their house sold below market value because everyone in the neighborhood knew the story, and no one wanted to touch it. The new owners were a young couple from California who seemed nice and had no idea about the drama that had preceded them. I kept my trail cameras up, not because I was paranoid, but because they had proven useful. They caught the neighborhood package thief in June, which made me popular with everyone on the block. They also recorded a bear that wandered through in July, which was cool footage. Life went back to normal mostly. I still cut my own firewood every fall, and I still stack it neatly on my property. The difference now is that people respect it. No one questions whether I have the right to store it, no one complains about how it looks, and definitely no one tries to take it. I ran into Deborah, Patricia's friend who had defended her at the meeting at the grocery store in August. She looked embarrassed when she saw me. "Trevor, I owe you an apology," she said. "I did not believe you at first. I thought Patricia was being railroaded. But when everything came out at the trial, I realized how wrong I was. She stole from my property too. I just never noticed because it was only a small amount of wood from a pile I was not really tracking." "I appreciate you saying that," I told her. "I should have believed you from the start. I am sorry." We chatted for a few more minutes, and it felt like a weight lifting. The neighborhood divisions that had formed during the whole mess were finally starting to heal. In September, the HOA held its annual meeting to elect new officers. Greg chose not to run for president again, saying he had done his time and wanted someone else to take the reins. A retired teacher named Barbara Foster ran unopposed and won. Her first act as president was to propose a new policy requiring the HOA board to get explicit written permission before entering any homeowner's property for any reason, with exceptions only for genuine emergencies. It passed unanimously. I thought about Patricia sometimes, sitting in jail for something as stupid as stealing firewood. Part of me felt bad for her. She had destroyed her reputation, her marriage, and her freedom over what? A few $1,000s? It seemed like such a waste. But then I remembered how she had looked at me during the trial, not with remorse or apology, but with anger, like I was the one who had wronged her by catching her. Some people never accept responsibility for their actions. They always find a way to make themselves the victim. I was not going to be her victim, though. I had stood up for myself, gathered evidence, and let the legal system do its job. It had not been easy, and it had not been fun, but it had been necessary. By October 2026, exactly a year after the whole mess started, I was sitting by my fire pit on a cool evening, burning wood I had cut and split myself from that season's harvest. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the dark sky. My dog, a lab mix named Copper I had adopted in the spring, lay at my feet content. Derek came over with a six-pack of beer, and we sat watching the fire. "You ever think about how different things would be if you had not set up those cameras?" he asked. "All the time," I said. "I probably never would have figured out it was Patricia. The wood would be gone, I would be out the money and the work, and she would still be stealing from people." Wild how it all played out. Yeah. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the fire in the evening. Somewhere in the distance, I heard an elk bugle, that distinctive sound that echoed through the forest behind my house. It reminded me why I had bought this property in the first place. The peace, the privacy, the connection to the land. An HOA president had tried to take that from me, in her own petty way, by exerting control where she had no right to. But she had failed. The system had worked. Justice had been served. I raised my beer bottle toward the fire. "Here is to property rights and trail cameras." Derek laughed and clinked his bottle against mine. "And to crazy HOA presidents getting what they deserve." We drank to that. Life in Pine Ridge Estates was good again. The neighborhood had learned a valuable lesson about giving people too much power without accountability. The new HOA board was reasonable. The rules made sense, and people were actually happy to live there again. As for me, I kept doing what I had always done. I worked my contracting jobs, maintained my property, and enjoyed my little piece of Idaho. I had proven that standing up to bullies, even when they hide behind official titles and community rules, was worth it. And I never had a problem with my firewood again. The cameras stayed up, though, just in case, because as my dad used to say, trust everyone but always cut the cards. In HOA terms, that meant be a good neighbor, follow the rules, but always protect yourself with evidence. It was a lesson I would not forget, and apparently neither would anyone else in Pine Ridge Estates. Every few months someone new would move into the neighborhood, and eventually someone would tell them the story of Patricia Manning and the great firewood theft. It became neighborhood legend, a cautionary tale about what happens when someone abuses their power. I did not mind being part of that story. It reminded people that they had rights, that they did not have to accept being pushed around, and that sometimes standing up for yourself was the right thing to do even when it was difficult. Patricia was released from jail in November 2026 after serving her 6 months. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to Montana to live with her sister. She was still on probation and had to make monthly restitution payments. I never saw her again, and that was fine with me. Richard apparently remarried a year later to someone he met at a dental conference. Good for him. He seemed like he had been miserable with Patricia anyway. As for the firewood itself, I burned through most of that season's supply by February 2027. It kept me warm through one of the coldest winters Idaho had seen in years. There was something deeply satisfying about sitting by a fire, knowing that every piece of wood had been earned through honest work, and that no one could take that away from me. In March 2027, I got an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Patricia, forwarded through her lawyer since she was not supposed to contact me directly. The letter was brief. Mr. Ingram, I know this does not mean much, but I want to apologize for what I did. I let my position go to my head, and I convinced myself that I was acting in the community's best interest when really I was just being controlling and greedy. You did not deserve to be treated that way. I hope you can eventually forgive me, though I understand if you cannot. I have had a lot of time to think about my actions and their consequences. I am trying to be a better person. Patricia Manning. I read the letter twice, then set it aside. I appreciated the apology, even if it came 1.5 years too late. Forgiveness was something I would have to work toward. I was not quite there yet, but maybe someday. For now, I was content with my life. I had my house, my property, my work, and my dog. I had good neighbors and a functional HOA. I had learned to stand up for myself and to document everything, and I had plenty of firewood. Spring came to Idaho with its usual dramatic shift from frozen to blooming almost overnight. The aspens behind my property leafed out in brilliant green, and the wildflowers started their annual show. I spent my weekends working in my yard, planning some new landscaping projects, and occasionally going for hikes in the national forest. One Saturday in April, I was outside splitting next season's firewood when a car pulled into my driveway. I did not recognize it at first, but then I saw it was Barbara Foster, the current HOA president. "Trevor, do you have a minute?" she called out. "Sure, what is up?" I set down my splitting maul and walked over. "I wanted to run something by you. We are planning a community event for June, kind of a neighborhood block party. We thought it would be good to bring everyone together, help build community spirit after everything that happened." "Sounds good. We were hoping you might be willing to do a workshop on home security, specifically about using trail cameras and that kind of thing. After what happened with you, a lot of people have been interested in setting up their own security systems, and you have got real-world experience with how effective they can be." I thought about it for a moment. "Yeah, I can do that. Might be useful for people." "Great, thank you. And Trevor, I just want you to know that the whole board appreciates how you handled everything last year. It could not have been easy, but you did the right thing, and it made Pine Ridge Estates a better place to live." "I appreciate that, Barbara. I just did what anyone should do when they are wronged." "You would think so, but not everyone has the courage to follow through. So, thank you." After she left, I went back to splitting wood. Copper was lying in the shade, watching me work with that expression dogs get when they are content just to be near their person. The sun was warm, the breeze was cool, and I could hear birds singing in the forest. This was what I had fought for. Not just the firewood, though that was the tangible thing at the center of it all, but the right to live peacefully on my own property, to be left alone to do the things I enjoyed, and to not have someone else's power trip disrupt my life. The June block party was a huge success. Almost every household in Pine Ridge Estates attended. There were bounce houses for kids, grills going with burgers and hot dogs, and various activities throughout the afternoon. My security camera workshop drew about 30 people, and I spent an hour showing them different camera models, how to position them for best coverage, and how to use the footage if something did happen. Several people came up to me afterward to thank me, not just for the workshop, but for standing up to Patricia. Apparently, she had been making a lot of people miserable with her petty enforcement and power plays, but no one had wanted to be the one to confront her. My case had opened the floodgates, and several other people had come forward with their own complaints about her behavior. "You probably saved our neighborhood," one man told me. "I was about to sell and move rather than deal with her anymore." It was strange being treated like some kind of hero for what I still thought of as just protecting my property, but I understood what they meant. Sometimes it takes one person standing up to a bully to give everyone else permission to do the same. As summer progressed, I thought less and less about the whole incident. It became just another story in my life, something that had happened and was now resolved. I focused on my work, my hobbies, and enjoying my home. In August, I started dating someone I met through a friend. Her name was Olivia Emerson, and she was a veterinarian who had recently moved to Boise from Seattle. When I told her the story about Patricia and the firewood, she laughed so hard she nearly spit out her wine. "That is the most absurd thing I've ever heard," she said. "An HOA president stealing firewood to sell at Roadside? You cannot make that up." "I know. Sometimes I still cannot believe it actually happened." "But you got justice, right? She went to jail?" 6 months, yeah, and she has to pay everyone back." "Good. People like that need to face consequences." Olivia started spending more time at my place. She loved the property, the privacy, and especially Copper, who adored her instantly. By fall, she was there most weekends, and we started talking about her maybe moving in. "I should warn you," I joked one evening as we sat by the fire pit. "Living here comes with HOA drama potential." "I think you guys scared off any future drama for a generation," she said. "Besides, I can handle a neighborhood Karen if one shows up. I deal with difficult pet owners all the time." We laughed about that, but she was probably right. The neighborhood had learned its lesson about giving one person too much unchecked authority. The new HOA board was transparent, communicated well, and actually served the community instead of ruling over it. In October 2027, 2 years after the initial theft, I got a notice that Patricia had completed her restitution payments. I received a check for $1,800, the appraised value of my stolen firewood, plus interest. I deposited it and used the money to buy a new chainsaw, a really nice one that would make processing firewood much easier. There was a certain poetic justice in that. Patricia's theft had ultimately upgraded my equipment. Life continued on. Olivia did move in with me in December, bringing her 2 cats who surprisingly got along well with Copper. We hosted Thanksgiving that year, inviting several neighbors over, and it felt good to have a house full of people and laughter. I never took down the trail cameras. They became a permanent part of the property's security system, and I actually added a few more to cover blind spots. Better safe than sorry, and the peace of mind was worth the small investment. In January 2028, I heard that Patricia's probation had ended. She was officially done with the legal system. I felt nothing when I heard the news, no anger, no satisfaction, just a vague sense that a chapter had finally closed completely. Barbara Foster stopped by in February with some HOA paperwork for me to sign, routine stuff about approving the annual budget. "You know, Trevor, I have been president for over a year now, and I still hear about Patricia at almost every board meeting," she said. "Someone will propose something, and someone else will say, 'Well, we do not want another Patricia situation.' She has become shorthand for everything we do not want the HOA to be." "That is probably healthy," I said, "as long as people remember and learn from it." "Oh, they remember. Trust me, you are a legend around here." "I would rather just be a regular neighbor." "Too late for that," she said with a grin. "You are the guy who took down the evil HOA president with trail camera footage. That is going in the neighborhood history books." After she left, Olivia came out of the home office where she had been doing paperwork. "Evil HOA president?" she asked, one eyebrow raised. "Apparently that's my legacy." "Could be worse. You could be the evil HOA president." We both laughed at that. As winter turned to spring in 2028, I realized that the whole experience had changed me in subtle ways. I was more aware of my rights, more willing to stand up for myself, and more careful about documenting things. But I was also more cynical about neighborhood politics and more protective of my privacy and property. The trade-off seemed worth it. I had learned that sometimes doing the right thing required being uncomfortable, confrontational, and persistent. I had learned that evidence was everything, that the legal system could work if you gave it good information, and that standing up to bullies, even official ones, was possible. Most importantly, I had learned that my home, my property, and my peace of mind were worth fighting for. The firewood that had started everything continued to be a part of my annual routine. Every fall, I went into the forest with my new chainsaw, cut dead standing timber, hauled it home, split it, and stacked it. Every winter, I burned it to keep warm. The cycle was meditative, connecting me to the land and to the practical reality of providing for myself. No one ever bothered my firewood again. In fact, people tended to give my woodpile a wide berth, like it was cursed or something. That was fine with me. The whole point was to be left alone to live my life in peace. 3 years after Patricia stole my firewood, I could honestly say that life was good. I had work I enjoyed, a partner I loved, a home I was proud of, and a neighborhood that had learned to function like an actual community rather than a petty fiefdom. The trail cameras still monitored my property, silent guardians documenting the passage of days and seasons. They captured wildlife, weather, the changing light, and occasionally something useful like the time they caught someone dumping trash on the Forest Service land behind my house, which I reported to the authorities. But mostly they just gave me peace of mind. I knew that if anything happened, if anyone tried to take advantage of me or violate my property again, I would have evidence, I would have proof, I would have the tools to defend myself and seek justice. And that knowledge, that sense of security and preparedness, was worth more than 6 cords of firewood ever could be. As I sit here now writing this all down, I'm looking out my window at my current woodpile, neatly stacked and drying for next winter. It represents hundreds of hours of work, from cutting to hauling to splitting to stacking. It represents self-sufficiency, preparation, and connection to the land. It also represents a turning point in my life, the moment I decided that I was not going to be pushed around, that I was going to stand up for myself no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it became. Patricia Manning stole my firewood and tried to sell it roadside. My trail camera footage ended her defense and her reign as HOA president. But more than that, it taught an entire neighborhood about accountability, evidence, and the importance of standing up to abuse of power. That is a legacy I can live with, and I still have plenty of firewood.